Welcome to episode 4 of the Viking Voices Podcast. And this week we have Professor Tammy Katuin. Obviously supposed to be last week recorded due to unforeseen circumstances. We had to push that back, but we're glad to finally have you on the podcast. Professor Katuin, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
We couldn't say no to you. You were one of the first names that popped up. So
that's cool, I guess.
We know you have some stories. I know I had a class with you last semester.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, accounting, finance. You're more so marketing. So that was the only class I've had with you, but got to know you there, and you know, it was a fun time, and thought it would be great to have you on the podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. So would love for you to do a little bit of introducing where you're from, kind of where'd you grow up, go to school, and everything. And I think I know Fresno, but for the people that don't, the floor's yours.
Well, Fresno is only part of the story.
Okay.
So I have a non-traditional background of how I got here. Some of my students have heard the story, some of them haven't. But I originally was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest outside of Portland, Oregon. Spent my first 20-plus years there, and then moved to California outside of Fresno, which is right smack dab in the middle of California in the ag country. Very different than what people in North Dakota think of when they think California. Central Valley, called the San Joaquin Valley, produces more cultural food products for our country than any other region and the world. And so it's very conservative compared to the rest of California, very rural in a lot of places, but still a lot of people. Fresno metropolitan area encompasses about 1 million people.
Wow.
That's more than the state of North Dakota. So it was very different moving here. So I was there for 30-plus years, raised my kids there. One is still there, and one is here in Fargo, which is how I ended up here. So in 2009, students won't remember this, but in 2009 there was this thing called the real estate bubble bust.
Oh, some might.
Yeah.
Some might.
And I worked in real estate as the director of marketing and market research and information systems for a very large commercial and agricultural real estate firm. And in 2009, after I came back from my birthday lunch that afternoon, the CEO wanted to meet with me and then shared that they could no longer afford me and let me go after 16 years. So that was like a huge shock. But, you know what they say, one door closes, one opens. So at the time you're going through that, you don't see that. But that's actually what did happen. Fortunately, a couple of years before that happened, I decided to go back to college to get a degree. One thing many people don't know about me is I was a high school dropout. So at 16, I dropped out of high school, got a GED, left home, started working, and just went from there. Ended up working with this real estate firm as a graphic designer, self-taught, and worked my way up through that into developing their marketing program for commercial and ag real estate, which I really, really loved. And then we started hiring interns out of Fresno State's business school, and these were folks that are interested in real estate as a career. So they have a really good real estate program at their Sid Craig School of Business at Fresno State. Go Bulldogs. And one day it just occurred to me that I'm hiring these young people with degrees or soon to have degrees, and I didn't have one. So that was a light bulb moment, and so I started taking classes at a local community college and then transferred that to Fresno Pacific University in Fresno, and go Tigers, and graduated with my business degree there. And just as I was graduating is when I lost my job.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my first professors at the community college had pulled me aside one day and said, when you get a business degree, when you get your bachelor's degree, you should get a hold of us because we need people like you to share with our students the real world experience. And I thought, gee, that sounds like a good semi-retirement job. And then in or 2009, when I lost my job. I was just getting my bachelor's degree. I just finished it up, was waiting for my diploma. And so I gave that professor a call. That was in April, and in August, I stepped into my first classroom at Reedley College, which is a small California State community college where Josh Allen went to school.
I was going to say, that sounded familiar.
When he did not get recruited out of high school, he
That's
played
right.
ball at Reedley College for 1 year before he was picked up then. So interesting stories there. Josh Allen grew up in a small town just outside of Fresno. And another interesting story, ended up randomly meeting his parents wine tasting on the Central Coast.
Wow.
Didn't know who he was, and talked about where we're from. And it's like, oh, I have family from that area. And Josh Allen's mother was best friends with my first cousin in high school.
Wow.
So
Small
crazy.
world.
It is a crazy small world. So anyway, I went to that class, walked out, and I thought this is what I was meant to do. I'd spent 16 years helping a lot of people make a lot of money. And I walked into this classroom, and it was a mix of ages, ethnicities. It's a small farming community. There were, folks there that were, first-generation Americans working in packing houses and wanting to make a better life for their family. And it's like, what better thing to do in your life but help other people? And so that's what I did. And I started teaching part-time, adjuncting at different schools. I taught at Reedley. I taught at another school called Clovis Community College. Still have connections there. Taught at Fresno Pacific University, actually, too, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Full circle moment for that. And got a full-time job, finally, with a small 2-year tech school. So I taught primarily in those first years what is equivalent to CIS 170 here. So I taught computer concepts and technology mixed in with some business courses. Worked there for 5 years, and then got a email one Sunday morning that the school was closing and come get your stuff on Monday. And I was like,
just like that.
Great.
Yeah.
So there was 2 times, it's like, wow, I thought I had found my thing, and poof, something happens. But again, another door opens, right? So I went back, adjuncting all over the place, and it was, paying my bills, loved what I was doing, knew something was going to happen, and was applying for, tenure track. So I was looking for public tenure track positions was my goal. And it's tough competition there, especially for someone who's not exactly, 25 to 30.
That's right.
So my son went to school at UND. He left Fresno to take their, commercial aviation program. And we flew up there to check it out before we decided that would be a good place for him to go, because, Fargo or North Dakota is actually Grand Forks, never heard of it. So I flew up there, great program for commercial aviation. And while I was there, I found out they had a wonderful MBA program that I could take from a distance. And I was ready for that. If I was going to teach in upper, higher education, I was going to need to have a master's degree, specifically an MBA if I wanted to teach in business. So signed up for that, did that, graduated with my MBA from UND in 2012. He graduated shortly after that, and he is now a captain with Sun Country Airlines out of Minneapolis. So his job thing worked out.
Yeah.
Settled in Fargo, met a girl, and married her in school. She was from Fergus Falls, Minnesota. So they settled in Fargo, and I was kind of, complaining about this whole process of, applications and interviews and rejections, or making it to the second round. And, it's very, 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 roller coastery. And he goes, well, why don't you look up here, Mom? And I said, well, I never thought about that. He's been gone 10 years. It's about time to go spend some time with my son. Expanded my job search, and opening came up here Valley City State, and I applied for it and came up for an interview in March of 2018, and my interview was postponed 2 days for a blizzard.
Oh,
So
bit of a preview of what you're about to deal with.
So I was like, okay, this is what it's like in March, in spring break in California. You're heading to the beach,
Yep.
right? Or spring skiing in Lake Tahoe. And shortly thereafter, they offered me the position, and I got rejected some more in California, and I was like, all right, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. And loaded up my Mini Cooper and my 2 poodles, and off we went. Bought an adorable house here in Valley City, and have just been rocking and rolling here ever since.
That's right. Never looked back. And so so you drove, obviously, like you said, from California. What's that drive look like for you?
A long one.
Yes.
Especially driving with 2 poodles, which are like toddlers. If you're driving with small children, you can't just stop anywhere and do whatever you want to do. But I drove to Portland, where I came from. My mom and my sister still live there, and she said, why don't you come here first, and then I'll drive the rest of the way out with you. So we did that. I drove to Portland, then we drove straight east until we got here, but we stopped along the way, got to see some cool things, and I've made that trip a few times now. The last 2 summers, I've taken my camper with me. First year, I decided that Mini Cooper wasn't for me, so I bought a Subaru in October of 2018, and the next day we had a blizzard, so that was a good decision.
Yeah, that's a really good decision.
Yeah.
I have a car that gets easily stuck in some winter conditions, so you need a bit of extra utility in the winter, especially these North Dakota winters. That snow's no joke.
It is not, and that Subaru has not let me down. I went to Muscatel in Moorhead, and I said, I've got this really steep driveway. Is this going to work for me? And he goes, if this doesn't work for you, I will come get it and give you your money back.
Everyone has that one car that just never fails them, and it appears you found it there. And so you said you bought a house here in Valley City, and I kind of wanted to touch on this because you have a couple Airbnbs.
I do. I'm known as the Airbnb lady in Valley City.
Okay. Well, to me, you're known as my marketing professor.
Right.
I know, actually, my parents were looking into, you come down in the spring, you don't want to necessarily stay at the hotel here. You want to go Airbnb. But so talk about how you kind of got into the Airbnb scene. Obviously, when you think about Airbnbs, you don't necessarily think small town. How have you kind of worked that into, teaching here and kind of everything you do here in Valley City?
Well, that's interesting as well. As a marketing type person and a non-traditional thinker, I'm an early adopter to a lot of things. And in Fresno, when Airbnb first became a thing, I had a house there with 3 bedrooms, living just me and my poodles. And I thought, I wonder if anybody would pay to stay in a spare bedroom here. So I, set up the room, put it online, and within 24 hours I had my first booking.
Wow.
Which was a Chinese airline pilot that happened to be off duty for a little bit, was on his way to Las Vegas from San Francisco, and found my place. And most interesting conversations as he was using his translation app on his iPhone, and it was really cool. And I've had some really cool people stay there. And it was like, yeah, there are people that want to do this. And people thought I was weird doing it, and people that came there thought they were weird doing it. You're going to stay in somebody's house. You're going to have strangers in your house. But it's all set up in a way that makes it pretty safe. I've had 0 problems. And then I got into traveling nurses, and they need a place to stay in 12-week contracts, and that's very lucrative. And so that worked out really well. And then ended up was coming here. So I didn't sell my house the first year, it was like, okay, if things don't work out, I still have my house.
Mm.
So I had a friend of mine rent my master bedroom and maintain the house, and still Airbnb'd the spare bedroom. So I got into a habit of having other people pay for my housing costs, and that worked out well.
Yes.
Then I came here, and I bought this adorable house. Real estate prices are crazy cheap here compared to where I came from,
Yeah,
obviously.
That's that's probably a nice sight for sure.
Yeah, and a friend of mine who taught here at the time was retiring, and she wanted to sell her little one-bedroom adorable cottage. And I said, when you're ready to sell that, let me know, and I would love to either use it as a rental or maybe an Airbnb. So she did, sold it to me, and rented it back from me until she was ready to move at the end of that academic year. And then I, put the Airbnb spin on it, gave it a fresh coat of paint. I am slightly dyslexic. And, fixed it up. It was adorable. And again, I put it on the market, and I was in class. I've been telling my students about this, how to be, a business owner, how to own real estate, how to be an entrepreneur. And I put it online. And while I was in class, I got my first booking within 24 hours of putting it online. And it's just went crazy from there. And then towards the fall, I started getting requests from duck hunters to come stay. And it's like, what is going on here? So looked into that, and we're right in the middle of the flyway, and this is a thing, right? So my very first group that came out was from Virginia. Most of my groups come out from the East Coast, and they just were here and left their fourth year in a row. They started at the cottage. That next year, I bought a 4-bedroom, bigger place suited for hunters, set it up specifically for the outdoors people. And they were at the cottage first year, 3 years now at the lodge. So I got the cozy cottage in Valley City and the lodge in Valley City. And they're very different. One is set up for big groups, one's set up for smaller folks. I've had a lot of students' parents come and stay. I love hosting parents. The lodge is already booked for... actually, both places are already booked for graduation in May with families, and I love that. And it's just worked out really, really well. And they both generate a good amount of revenue and are paying for themselves. And it was part of my retirement plan was one of it. So when I'm ready to retire, I'll sell off my real estate, fortune here in Valley City.
Your empire.
and buy a little condo in Fargo where I'm closer to my son, so I can travel easier, go back and forth to California, and
That's right.
get out of here in the wintertime and come back when it's nice.
That's interesting. Interesting how that works out. It seems like you've got it kind of all figured out and planned from that end. And I know, yes, a lot of buzz, especially now. Everyone talks about, okay, how can I, maximize my equity? How can I pay for my assets, sort of thing? And it seems like you've got it figured out. So whoever's watching at home, you keep rewinding this and you keep writing it down until you figure it out here.
I was actually on the front page of the paper last year.
Well, go
about
find
it.
that edition.
And then I had a student I had never met, a finance and accounting student, stopped by my office yesterday, started talking to me, and I said, I would love to talk to you, but I don't know who you are. Tell me who you are. And he wanted advice on starting an Airbnb.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
happy to do that.
Absolutely.
There's a big need for it here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, like I said, I wouldn't have thought, small town, but then you find the duck hunters, and obviously the campus, obviously the parents coming down, that is going to be a big market for you. And it's very interesting. I definitely wanted to ask you about that because I know it's not something everybody does. And I wanted to dive into that. So now I want to ask you, are you involved with anything on campus other than teaching?
Probably too much. But
Well, just give us some of the main ones, I suppose, if you want, and talk about kind of what you do.
My favorite thing to do is to go watch my students play and compete. I love that. I go to every home game that I can. Football, volleyball, basketball. hard to see the softball and baseball sometimes because there's years where you don't
Freezing.
even get to play.
Yes.
Right. And then I really enjoy meeting their parents, and made a lot of great connections with the folks. I tend to be an adopter of students that come from a long way away, and so that gives me joy when I can help them, feel better about being here and help keep them there. I don't know, I just get a lot involved in a lot of things, but not like a clubber specifically, but I recently became the department chair of the business department. We're the second largest department in the school under education, and we have grown a lot in the 6.5 years I've been here. My marketing program has really grown. And so that keeps me very busy.
Yes.
Especially now as department chair, which was not something that I was seeking out. But again, one of those things that just falls in your lap. It's a situation that needs to be taken care of, and somebody's got to pick up the ball and run with it. So it's been a lot, but it's been working out okay. And it's just I love, the number one thing I love about this school is the students.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep me coming back. My adorable earrings were given to me by Noah Chambers' mom.
Okay. I saw those. I was like, we got, I'll tell you what.
This is swag, man.
This is the marketing professor right here.
Right. When I have students come visit, they're thinking about coming to school here, I load them up with swag. Something they're not going to throw in the garbage can when they get back home.
That's right.
And it's like, in case you didn't, get a hint, I teach the marketing classes here. And a lot of students are now adding marketing minors to their majors, in business and outside of business. And I've created a couple of new certificates that students are taking if they're business students or not. The most recent one is a certificate in sports marketing, which I'm getting a lot of athletes signing up for that. And I've got 2 coaches teaching 2 of those classes, which is fantastic. And so I see that certificate really taking off and doing really well.
That's right. And I know you mentioned, and then that's the NIL one, correct? Is that what the one you're talking about?
NIL is one of the courses that you take, yes.
Okay.
And you actually get a certification in, being able to work in that field.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now, I didn't have this one on my question list, but it kind of just popped into my head while we were talking about sports marketing. From your marketing background, what do you think NIL is going to do for student athletes? Because obviously a lot of athletes are in business here.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see that looking like? Obviously it's different when you're playing for Valley City as opposed to if you're playing for a Big Ten school where you're on national television every day. But what do you think NIL is going to do for student athletes down the road? Well,
it's already doing a lot. It's doing, I think, a lot of good things and a lot of maybe not so good things. Mm-hmm. Just read a blurb on a news thing this morning about a certain athlete in Colorado that says he'll stick around for an 8-figure number next year. And I don't think that's what it was meant to be. I think student athletes have kind of gotten the short end of the stick for a long time by not being able to use their name, image, and likeness to a certain extent. But then you go that far, and it kind of makes a mess of things. Mm-hmm. But even our local athletes, you walk around, you see, or you go to a football game, and you see folks with, their a player's name on it. That's or right. their face on it, and that's an NIL deal. Mm-hmm. They've signed up with some companies that are helping out students in AIA schools. It doesn't just have to be the big schools doing that. So I think that's good. Mm-hmm. That helps you get name recognition. It'll help you when you are out looking for a job.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, a bit of a double-edged sword. You're seeing some, I don't know if it was a quarterback in a big school, but the school didn't give him his NIL money or whatever, so he's sitting out the entire year. So it's interesting how that dynamic, and then obviously you said the Colorado player, and I feel like I have 2 names at the top of my head that I could probably probably think about who it is, and that Colorado school has a very is tied pretty tight to the NIL and to the show stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you that one because it's an interesting one from a marketing perspective, because obviously student athletes are now kind of, well, starting their own business, I suppose. They get to use their name for that. And yeah, again, it's going to be interesting. A lot is happening out of it already, but again, it's going to be interesting to see down the road how much they try and maximize what they can get, and like you said, getting the short end of the stick for a while.
It's really fun to see some of the real go-getter students go after that here. And that is a great resume builder, right? So you're from a small school in a small town in a not very big populated state, and you're actually making some inroads in marketing yourself. And marketing yourself is what you got to do when you go out looking for a job.
That's right.
And people will come out and seek you out because of what you've done.
Yeah, and like you said, we have seen those, player merchandise. I know the school has a deal with an app or like a smaller company, and I know I know I'm on that too now. It's like they said, sign up. So I was like,
keep it updated.
Yep, that's right. I was like, okay. So let's get into a couple fun questions. Obviously, you've been in Valley City for a bit, so I can ask you this one. And this one for me has been kind of a favorite on the podcast. But what's your favorite restaurant in Valley City?
Right now, it's El Val Taco Shop.
That's
It is the
popular
closest thing to authentic Mexican food I've had since I left Fresno.
Wow.
It's legit.
Yes, I've been there a few times, and I know a lot of people are liking that one, and that has been an answer twice already on the podcast. Maybe once, or maybe this is the second time. This might be the second time. 2 for 4, though. Not bad. They're doing a good job over there at El Valle, and that's big words. Best
I know.
Since California, which is...
Yeah, the family that owns it is from San Diego, so they know how to make legit good. Best, probably one of the top 3 breakfast burritos I've ever had.
Okay, I haven't had that one yet, so I'll have to go.
Chorizo and egg. You gotta go for it.
Okay, well, you gotta listen to the professor here, because if you're saying it's the most authentic since California, they're doing something right, and I've enjoyed it a lot. Let's go with bucket list vacation destination.
Oh, a lot of my students know that I love to travel and vacation, and I've been into cruising for the last couple of years. And I'm going to be on a couple of cruises over 17 days in Mexico over winter break.
Wow.
Can't beat that. But I really want to go on there's a trip to the South Pacific on a cruise ship. I think it's 28 days or 30-something days. And I would just love to do that.
Yeah. There's something about the open water. I have been on a few cruises myself, and do you have a favorite one you've been on in the past, or do they all just kind of have different significance for you?
The last 3 winters, I went with my traveling buddy from California on cruises to Mexico on the west coast side. They call it the Mexican Riviera. You do Cabo, San Lucas, and Mazatlan, and Puerto Vallarta. Super fun ports and wonderful at-sea day activities. And this year we're expanding that to do Sea of Cortez, where you go to Cabo San Lucas and then up into the Sea of Cortez to a few ports we haven't been to. So I love those Mexican ports. The people are fantastic. The food, oh my God, the food. Talk about legit, right?
Yes.
And people don't realize how much seafood is involved with Mexican food, but you should try it. People, fish tacos, no, they're delicious when done right.
Yep.
Shrimp tacos, just fantastic.
Oh yeah,
So
no, you're winning.
I will go to Mexico any day of the week.
Okay, well you're winning a lot of points with me. I love seafood. I love, fresh fish by the ocean. You have to. I mean, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have to be eating seafood, right? It's so delicious, and so fresh.
Found out this last trip, Mazatlan is the #1 place that shrimp come from for the world. So it's like everything you want is there if you like shrimp.
Interesting. #1 places for shrimp. Let's circle back. What is that agricultural kind of spot that you came from? What's the number one export from there?
Number one export, I believe, it might have changed, was almonds. Almonds and
okay.
pistachios are the big crops, and grapes and wine. So it's big wine country.
California, yes, known for their wine. You just jogged my memory with the shrimp. I was like, well, I want to know what's coming out of there. Almonds and pistachios.
Yep.
Okay, interesting. A lot of legumes there, and obviously California, a big wine place. Probably number one in the U.S., right?
Yeah, you never know who you're going to run into. You could run into Josh Allen's parents.
Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills quarterback, mentioned on the Viking Voices podcast. Couple more for you. Let's go with a hobby people may not know you have.
Oh, gosh.
You already talked about Airbnbs, so you have to find something else.
Airbnb's kind of a hobby, but a job, too.
Yeah, that's fair.
But hobbies. Well, my big hobby in California was wine tasting. Loved to go wine tasting, learn about wines. I wanted to be, a wine server in my retirement, and so that's kind of changed a little bit, but it could still work out. But travel, I guess, is my biggest hobby, and I love to drive. I love to camp with my scamp. I've gone to a lot of places. Oh, one of my newest hobbies is wildlife watching in Yellowstone and Grand Tetons. So don't get me started on that, or I'll tell you way more than you need to know about wolves.
Okay. Hey, well, if you want to talk about it a little bit, we definitely can. So wolves. Do you do any bird watching, or is that not?
That is a hobby of mine as well. Yes, that was a pandemic hobby that I got started in, and kept me busy. And I love to learn. Right, I'm a lifelong learner, so I learned a lot about birds, and then I had an opportunity to learn more about wolves than I ever thought was possible.
I was going to say, that's an interesting one.
So I spent 6 nights, 7 days in Yellowstone last summer, and 3 of those days was going out with a group, small group. It was entitled Babies of Yellowstone, so it was in June when the babies are out and about for the season.
Okay.
And it was put on by an organization called Yellowstone Forever, which is the educational arm of Yellowstone National Park. So I stayed in the park at a research facility called Buffalo Ranch, and just was immersed into, getting up before the sun comes up.
Right.
And driving out to see, my bucket list had become to see a wolf in the wild.
Yeah.
And a specific wolf in the wild and babies. And I got to do all of those. And another bucket list thing, because I picked up this book about wolves when I was in Grand Tetons the year before and discovered this author named Rick McIntyre, who has been a wolf watcher, worked for national parks for years, and has watched wolves more than anybody else on the face of the earth. Fantastic book. And I got to meet him, too.
Wow.
And get his autograph and chat with him for about 30 minutes while we were watching the den of Wolf 907, the oldest wolf in the park. And she just gave birth to her 10th litter 10 years in a row. So it was an extraordinary experience.
I didn't know you could watch wolves. I knew birds. I knew, obviously, you have duck hunting and deer hunt. I'm Canadian, big city, Edmonton. I know nothing about hunting. So maybe that fell by the wayside for me, but I didn't know wolves were something you could watch. But it's very interesting. Is that is that more of like a niche thing where it's like not a lot of people do this, but
a lot of people
really
do that. There's so many. Wolf watching generates millions and millions of dollars for the region of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So all the towns around it, all the businesses around it, people come from all over the world to watch. Well, because one of the only places on the planet that you can go see wolves in the wild, but you view them through a high magnified spotting scope.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not have that when I went there, but on the little seminar trip that I went on, they provided those for you. So when I got back, started doing some research. Now I own my own spotting scope.
Very cool.
And I'll be taking that with me on my next trip, which will probably be this summer.
Right on. That's very interesting. Maybe I'm just very misinformed that I don't know wolves are a popular animal to watch.
That and grizzly bears.
I can see that one. Yes. When we drive, I always, growing up, you go to baseball tournaments, you go to all that stuff, and you drive through the Jasper area, and bears walking on the side of the highway, moose, and traffic is just backed up, and you're just taking pictures of everything. So I've seen my fair share of bears and moose, but not wolves. I didn't know that was a big one. Last fun one here. Well, they've all been fun, let's be honest. Let's go with a talent that you have that people may not know.
Oh, God. I don't know. I guess I have a talent for connecting with people. So I'm very social. And that was a shift when moving from a small town where a big town to a small town when I had a big group of friends that we all loved like live music, so we'd go see local bands a lot and do a lot of those fun things. So that has shifted a bit. I don't know what I have any specific talent for.
Wolf watching.
I mean, I have a lot of interest in that. I mean, wildlife watching, that was like something I didn't even think about until I read this book from Rick. And now I'm actually taking a first aid class through Valley City State with Rochelle Hunt, so I can be CPR certified because I'm going to apply to be a volunteer for that program next summer.
Wow.
So that I can go on many more of those excursions, hopefully driving the little bus with people and the expert biologists that run them, and not have to pay thousands of dollars to do it.
Interesting. Hey, that makes sense. I
guess I have a talent for figuring out ways to do things I want to do without having to break the bank.
Yeah. Well, that's a good talent to have for sure, and maybe hopefully I learn that talent pretty soon. Let's finish with a couple ones back to going back to more so VCSU. So what have been some of your favorite memories at VCSU?
Probably the first paint bucket game against Jamestown when I was here. First one I went to in Jamestown, they lost it, and then the next year they won it, and it was just like the stadium was, packed and wrapped around the whole thing, and everybody went wild, and that was just super fun. My favorite days every year are graduation and seeing, 4 years in, I had students that I started with, freshmen, and then got to watch them walk across the stage, and those are great moments. So those are favorite days. And I guess those are the two things.
Those are two great answers. I think every VCSU student can say the paint bucket. Their first paint bucket is definitely a special one. Especially, I came from a place where high school football and college football aren't big. So you go to the first paint bucket game and you're like, oh, there's a few thousand people here. This is college football in a small town. Half the town's out. So definitely a special one. And then graduation, obviously, as a professor, that makes sense. You don't want to be seeing the same student 7-8 years in a row.
I see them 5 sometimes. Yeah. That's okay.
That's perfectly fine. My last question for you would be, what would you say to a prospective student coming to VCSU if you just kind of had them in a one-on-one setting like this?
Well, when students come to visit, it is a one-on-one setting, usually with a parent. Maybe it's a couple of students. And I tell them stories about what it's like to be here as a student, the community feeling of the school, that close-knit feeling. We had a lot of students that come from small towns. So I try to make them feel comfortable through stories about other students that I've had and success stories. The parents love the success stories that are there, right?
I bet.
And, the scholarships. The business department has a ton of our own scholarships that we give to our students. So I just tell them that, if you can go to a big school with a big name on your degree, you won't have the same experience.
That's right.
Here you will have opportunities that you would never have at a big school to get involved in anything you want to get involved with and have support. as we as professors know you, know your name. Sometimes we know you too well, right?
That's fair, yep.
And that's why I love getting to know the parents, because they love to ask me, how's so-and-so doing? And, I can't really tell them because of federal laws, but my go-to answer when I tell my students this, I just tell them, it's like, they're doing great,
Yep.
Would love it, he's doing wonderful, or she's doing wonderful.
Yes.
And that connection, and you don't have that at a big school,
No,
right?
absolutely not.
Your parents aren't going to meet your professors, and your professors aren't going to be,
On a podcast with you.
on a right? Students probably know more about me than they should too, but I know, I like that. I know about what their challenges are. And students will, it's like, I think, why aren't you coming to class? What's wrong with this, person? It's like, why are they dodging me?
Mm-hmm.
And then when they finally come to me and tell me what the challenges are in their life, and I go, oh, I get it. I wish you would have, opened up earlier.
Right.
But let's work with this. Let's fix this, and let's get you across that graduation stage.
Mm-hmm.
And then those students, forever stay in contact with you.
Yeah.
And call you up when they get their first job, and that's, I get the text messages or the phone calls about, guess what, I got a job.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely a tight-knit community here, when you think about it. And obviously, yeah, like you said, some people know more about their professors than they should, and professors know more about their students than they should. But that's, at VCSU, that's normal. That's, everyone here, and it's such a tight-knit community. That's
right?
exactly
Yeah.
it. And, felt that community recently for sure. But Professor Katuin, thank you for I had you on, sorry. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And I know
this was a different experience. So.
Well, you were saying before, but we're not going to have to cut anything out. You know what? We kept it PG. We kept it good. So we're going to have it roll through all the way. Yeah, I think episode 4 was an absolute success. And I know you have class now. So
oh, gosh, I better get going.
I'll have to cut you loose. But, Professor, thank you for joining us. And for Viking Voices, I'm Jaden Babiak, and this has been episode 4.